Good evening, chaps, and welcome back to Glazed, and this is episode 7 of the fortress we've been working on together. So let's dive straight into it. You can see we're down here in the underground farming area, and we finally got this all cleared out after we eventually succumbed and decided to dump all the rock, because it was taking too long for the stockpiles to clear. And I do think sometimes you can fall down a bit. It would be nice if you could selectively choose items to go to a stockpile, a bit like you can with the dumping command, but that's not something we could do. So we've managed to clear out quite a large area now, which is going to enable us to set up our farming down here, which is nice. We've got a few walls and doors built here, and that's just to block it off so that when we flood it, it doesn't flood the entire fortress. And if we come in here, you can see that the doors are just set to forbidden, and that will mean the dwarves won't try and run in there while we're flooding it, because that could end in a bit of a disaster. So we come up here. You can see this is where the irrigation channel comes right down from the surface. So that's how we're going to be flooding this, and you need to flood it to give the stone layer a dusting of mud to grow crops in. And then once we break into the cavern layers, it will also start to grow moss and grassy coverings, and also large underground mushrooms which can be harvested like trees. So we'll have an underground tree farm eventually. And it's all aiming towards the goal of having all our industry safe underground, so none of our dwarfs are up on the surface where there could be goblins, for example. Obviously not as critical on an embark like the one we are, because we haven't got anything particularly nasty roaming around on the surface. So where those tables are down there, that's actually going to be where our temporary dining area is going to be set up till we get the pub all mined out, which is going to be a bit of a big project. And this is the temporary setup that we're still living with, which, to be honest, is pretty subpar now. All the dwarves just squashed into that little room. That's where the farm is, that's where the dining area is, and also our food stockpile. So if we come in here, we can see this is where the meeting hall is. That's that designated area, and you can see it with that Y up in the corner. And really, we're going to want to move that all down underground. We've got 54 dwarves now, and it just seems a bit crazy that we're still stuck up on the surface, guys. So if we come back down here now, hopefully we're going to be able to flood this fairly evenly. It's going to depend a bit on the water mechanics, because I'm not sure exactly how the water will flow from that big chamber into that smaller one. So we'll have to see how that works out. Yeah, so this is going to be the dining table area, which we'll set up shortly. And as we come up here, you can see where we had that first irrigation channel dug out, and we had to cancel that. So we ended up with service stairway and then the actual irrigation channel. If we come up here, you can see I've channeled out a few more tiles, and if we go down one, you can see how that's creating a runoff from the river, and that's blocked off by a floodgate at the moment, and then eventually that will lead underground through the irrigation. So this was the first one we tried. We ran into some difficulty, so this is the second one. It's too wide now, and that's going to run all the way down to that underground farm area. So as soon as we lift that floodgate, I'm going to pull the lever, the water's going to start streaming in into that little cistern, and then all the way down into our underground farm. Then that will cover the stone in a dusting of mud, and that will enable us to plant our plump helmets, and maybe eventually we'll get some pigtail and textile industry going as well, but we'll focus on food for now, make sure the fortress is stable, get our dwarfs moved underground, and then we'll go from there. So this second floodgate is going to have to be removed as well, and I thought about letting it fill up with water, timing it, and then doing it in little sections, but I think we're just going to freehand it. So if we come down, we're going to jump straight in, we're going to pull this third lever, so that's the capital P button. See, that's just been activated, and if we hop back down, we can see that floodgate's disappeared. So now that's open to that irrigation channel, so any water that comes into there will flood into the underground area, which is what we're after. And then we're going to have to pull another lever to activate this floodgate here. So there's some roots there, and I was trying to remember where the water goes across the diagonal in this game, guys, and I'm pretty sure it does. So hopefully we should have no problems with the water streaming across there and down the irrigation channel, right the way down to where our underground tree farm's going to be. Our underground farming's going to be. Getting ahead of myself there. So let's pull this lever as well, capital P again. Wait for a little dwarf to pop along, and hopefully we'll see this floodgate move, guys. There we go. So you can see the water streaming through. So water in this game's on a depth scale of 1 to 7, for those of you that don't know. If you've just started playing Dwarf Fortress and you can't see the depth, you just see a water graphic, then you need to enable that in the settings, because it's super helpful when you're doing tasks like this. So the water's going to start to drop down once we resume the game here, and it's going to start to flood down the 2 irrigation channels. That top one doesn't lead anywhere. Okay, that's great, guys. So our metalsmith's finally getting a bit more skill. He's become a metalsmith, which is nice, so hopefully we'll get some better quality armour. Might last a bit longer in combat, which is good. You can see a bit of froth coming up there from the water running down. Doesn't really mean anything, guys. And the water's going to start streaming down this channel into our large underground areas. And those of you who are eagle-eyed might have noticed that we had a masterpiece created down below on the announcement bar, which is really cool. So we've obviously got a carpenter now with a really high level of skill, which is quite a good benefit for the fortress, obviously. So I wasn't sure if there'd be an FPS effect from this water activity, but we seem to be doing okay, so I'm hoping this looks okay for you guys as well. Let me know if it's a bit juddery and I'll see if I can do anything better in future. And it looks like this is filling quite evenly, which is nice. I wasn't sure if we were going to run into difficulty where it just went straight into that smaller mined out area to the left, but it doesn't look like it. And there's the dusting of mud, guys. That's what we're after. That's what this is all about, and that's what is going to let us plant our crops and move our farming system underground, which is what we've been waiting to do for so long now. It feels like it's been pretty much since day one. So we're just going to let this all flood out, guys. So I have read recently that sometimes when crops get harvested, it can actually remove that dusting of mud, so you may have to re-flood every couple of years, which might be a bit of a nuisance. Certainly when I've played this game in the past, I was able to farm successfully for years on end without any trouble. So we'll see how that goes, guys. We might have to think about how we're going to manage that in future once we've got farms and stockpiles and stuff set up down here, because that could be a bit of a nuisance. And we finally got into autumn, so we're moving through the years now in our still relatively young fortress, and you can see that this first farm's almost completely full now. We're really getting close, so we'll probably have to start thinking about shutting it off soon. Okay, guys, so we've got a thief turned up. It's down there in the corner by the looks of things. And I'm just trying to remember where this is relative to our fortress. Okay, so we're directly above it. So if we resume, he should just run. Yeah, he's just going to scoot off, guys, so we're not going to be able to catch him, I'm afraid, but he's not got away with anything, so that's nice. Go back down to our underground farming area. You can see it's getting pretty full now. So this has taken a while to fill up, guys, but you can imagine this is actually quite a big surface area. If you just had normal part of your fortress and water streaming in, you really could be in trouble. And we can see that's up to 7 depth now as well. And that's just because it's a single tile hallway being filled up by that double tile channel from the surface, so it's just a bit of a bottleneck there. So hopefully that hasn't caught us out, guys. We're going to pull the lever and then that will shut off. And I'm a little bit concerned about all this water that's backed up, so we'll have to see how this goes, guys. Hopefully we're not going to get caught out here, because that would be a real shame. So all this deep water here is going to flood out into our 2 underground farming areas, and you can see it's still a full 7 depth there. It's just starting to even out now. Okay, so it's pretty much stopped at the top, so it looks like we should be okay, he says, touching wood. Yeah, I think it's gonna just about cover that second, is it? I think it hopefully should just about cover that second farming plot, because we've still got some deeper tiles and that big one's still all at depth 2. So we may have to let it overflow into this bottom area, just so that it can evaporate out. So water will evaporate at a depth of 1 in this game, and I think up to a depth of 4 is absolutely fine for a dwarf to run around in, so our dwarfs could scoot in there right now without any risk of drowning or anything like that. But we're going to want to let this water spread out so it can evaporate a bit quicker. So we filled up the 2 farming areas, so we're going to need to think about maybe dismantling part of this wall. So if we come in, it's under the designation menu, guys, so if you hit D, and then I think it might be N, if my memory serves me right, we can get some dwarfs down to dismantle some of the sections of wall, and that water's going to flood into that bottom chamber, and then it's going to start to evaporate, and then we're really only minutes away from being able to get the underground farming set up, which is nice. So you can see the capital C's flashing, that's constructed items, and we're on the N, which is remove constructions. We've designated that out, designated those upper ones out, and I believe the doors will just stay there, guys, so you do actually need to build them against the walls in the game, but I think if you remove walls around them, they just stay there. So we'll see, oh look, a stream of dwarfs coming down to help us out, which is nice. It's like they can sense the food that's going to be growing for them. They do love food, dwarfs. Food and booze. Both of which will come from the plump helmets, so maybe it's the booze that's motivating them. Okay, so they're making light work of all that, and we can see the water streaming through now. And you can see that dwarf's just scurried around to the other side, and he's not worried about that 2-depth water, so that's fine. All the water's going to come streaming out. And we're going to start getting the new dining area set up, guys, while this all starts to evaporate. Let's get a bit of multitasking in. So we'll just do 2 rows of tables, I think. Designate that out as a new meeting hall. We'll get some chairs either side as well. And then we can start to disassemble that area on the top, which will be really nice. And I think that's then going to become a temporary location for our first military. So we're going to set up a temporary barracks up there. And I keep using the term temporary, guys, but we are going to have a more permanent barracks set up overlooking the entrance to the fortress, which is our Khazad-dûm style setup that we still have to finalise. But for the moment, they can set up in that very upper level, and they'll be well poised to defend us from anything that might come our way. And we can start them training as well. It'll be good to get underway on that, as we've got some armour being made by the smith now, and also those 2 warhammers. Is it 2? There might be a few more now, guys. So that is 18 tables and chairs. Obviously not quite up to the 54 of the whole fortress, but it will definitely tide us over for now. Oh wow, okay, so we've got a trade mission from, I believe, our civilization. I think they're dwarves, so probably our civilization, possibly a neighbouring one. And we haven't built a trade depot, which is an absolute blunder. So really just build this straight away, guys. There's no reason to delay it. That's a real oversight on my behalf. I can only apologise. That's a bit of a mess. So we can see them in the bottom right hand corner of the map, and I think they're just going to mill around because they've got nowhere to disembark all their goods. I hope they don't just leave straight off the map again. I don't think I've ever been caught short like this, guys, so apologies. Bit of a disaster. And I think we're going to need to wait for a dwarf with architecture to get that up and going, so hopefully that's not too much of a delay. Okay, so coming back down into the depths of the fortress now, we can let that trade depot sort itself out, and we can see that our mating hall's really getting set up now, and we can see that all this water is starting to evaporate as well. It's going down to a depth of 1, and then it's just dissipating, so this will all be dry fairly soon, guys. I'd imagine, considering how large an area it is, it should take no time at all. So we'll get some we'll get some plump helmets set up, guys, and we'll start creating our food down here, which would be really nice. We can remove that setup up top. Okay, so at the moment we've just got a falcon and a peregrine, but I've seen a few monitor lizards around, so I'm quite keen to try and capture some of them, guys. I'm going to set up a few cage traps on the surface, and then once we've broken into the caverns, we can have livestock living down here as well off the grass or moss that's grown, and that'll be really good, because monitors, for example, produce a shed load of eggs, so that's another input into our food industry, and then we're going to really have a great backbone to feed all the dwarfs, which is exciting. We're going to come into the trade menu now, guys, and this is where we start to tell them what we think we might want. So I think we will go for some leather, just because we're not currently producing any, and I think a general rule of thumb with this is go for everything that you're not currently producing or can't currently produce, and you're going to be in a relatively good state. Apologies, we didn't get any leather there in the end. I think we could probably produce it if push came to shove, so let's focus on other things. We haven't found any of the other precious metals, so I've put some steel bars there, which would help improve our military, and silver, because as I mentioned in a previous episode, guys, one of the denser metals, so that's going to be one of the strongest materials for creating warhammers. I'm going to chuck a few seeds in there, guys, just in case we want to use that later on in the game. Not interested in trap components, not interested in picks, not really interested in clothes, although we don't have a textile industry made up, so that is something to possibly think about. Pets always can be quite good. You get more exotic ones from elves generally. You can get some quite unusual ones, which is nice. So let's get some hens and a rooster, and that will help us get the egg industry up and going, get some nesting boxes set up. And I love that you can get a llama and an alpaca. I think that's really cool. Quite funny animals. And we also get turkeys. I believe turkeys actually lay more eggs, so maybe we'll be better off with them than the chickens. And I'm just toying with the idea of getting a llama here, guys. But I think I'll leave it because we don't really have any use. As much as I like the idea of having llamas wandering around our fortress. I have no idea what a cavy boar and cavy sow are. I don't know if any of you guys know more about pigs than me, but that means nothing. Is it a colloquialism, like a billy goat? I don't really know. Booze, I think we'll leave. I normally grab cheese, just because it's a different food source. We're not currently making any. It's normally dead cheap, so you can buy a shed load of it. So let's just stick some of that on. Gypsum, I'd recommend getting, because we'll need that for plaster in the hospital later. It can be quite hard to find. I don't know if it's possible for a dwarf to request it if they enter a strange mood, but it's the sort of thing you could get caught out with. And I think that's another thing as well. If there's stuff that you know you don't have, if a dwarf requests it and they've gone into a strange mood, you're really looking at a dead dwarf at the least, guys, because he's going to go insane, he or she. So it's a good idea to pick some of these odds and sods up off these caravans. We're going to pick up some of this food stuff as well. I think most of this is from the surface, but it's just more variety, and it should give us some seeds as well. And then what I'm trying to do here, guys, is desperately remember which are actually flux-stone. I think limestone is. I think it tends to be what's it called? Not sedimentary. Metamorphic rock. Got there eventually, if I can remember geography from school. I think it tends to be metamorphic rock that's flux-stone, but as we know that, it can be used to create steel. So if we can get some flux-stone in, then we can create our own steel, which would be really nice, help our military out a bit. I couldn't remember what they all were there. I probably should have just double-checked, but we've gone for it now, so we'll see how that works out. Checking through everything else. Can be quite handy to get a rope. Sometimes if you get caught out in a difficult biome, you can find that the river can freeze over and you can struggle to get water. So a well can be a bit of a life saviour, and it's good to have clean water when you get a hospital set up. So ideally you want to be able to get that from underground as well, so you don't have to venture onto the surface if you can avoid it. You're probably noticing a common theme, guys. It's really great to get to a point where your fortress sustains itself underground. You don't have to mess around on the surface. As I said, we've got a relatively tame biome, but if you've embarked somewhere evil, you could have all sorts wandering around, and really you don't want your normal dwarfs having to go toe to toe with it. So sand, great example. If you haven't already found some, glass as well, just pick some up, because it's the sort of thing that could catch you out. Sand, of course, can be used to make glass, so it's worth getting some of that in. Eggs, I don't think you can hatch these, chaps. I don't think you can. May have to double check that. I think I'm just going to get a few cave crocodiles just in case, because they're pretty cool. And they produce eggs themselves at the very least, and we can probably train a few to fight for us, which would be quite funny. I wish you could train them as mounts, but I don't think you can. We can't have dwarves riding crocodiles into battle, at least not in this version of the game, I'm afraid. Clay, a pretty similar story to sand, just chuck some in there because you never know. So we haven't really got any wealth to trade away at the moment, guys, but we're going to have to start to think about building that up. Maybe we can use the master bone crafter that we've got. I'm not sure. That's something that we can think about, although we haven't got an excess of bones after we flew through all the elephant bones. I'm a little bit concerned we might have wiped them all out, so hopefully we get some more elephants again. And now we get to see what they've requested. My bad, guys. Sorry, this is what we've requested and the effect it will have on price. So it's a classic supply-demand situation. So the items that we've highlighted as a priority, they're going to charge more for, which is fine. You know, we should be more than capable of producing enough goods to purchase everything we want from them when they next visit. So I'm not too concerned about that at all. It's better that you get the stuff you want rather than leaving it down to a lottery. So it's this pre-scripted conversation that you have to go through. Right, okay. So we've actually just got a peasant that's withdrawn from society. So it looks like they're down there. Okay, so now we can see what they're after. Potash, shields and bucklers, that should be easy to produce. Toys, earrings, headwear, 206. Okay, so there's definitely some doable stuff there. I mean, I'm tempted just to build, if we just make a shed load of wooden shields and bucklers, I think there's definitely a lot of profit to be made there. So that's pretty cool. I'm not too sure what we're looking at here, guys. Okay, it's gone now. So I don't know if they leave. That's normally the end of the conversation that would signify they're leaving. I don't think so. So these merchants are just loitering, and I think they should wait at least a little longer. If we come up here and check on the trade depot, nothing's really happened. Construction's inactive and we're waiting on architecture. So let's just dive down here, and it's our mechanic that's got that labour active. So let's just see if he's bogged down. Yeah, okay, so unfortunately still trying to catch up on all the mechanisms we got going. We're trying to set up some cage traps on the surface to catch some animals, chaps, so that's what's been the delay here. So let's clear them off, and hopefully that'll speed things along, and we might get some trading done before the caravan leaves, which would be nice. So we can see that the peasants claimed this Dwarf's workshop, and I'm not sure I actually captured it here, so apologies for that, guys, but the requirements were a little bit tougher than in the past. So there was bone, cut gems, leather, and also metal. So I think we've got metal covered. Bone, I think we're a bit thin on the ground at the moment, but we can always slaughter animals, so not worried about that. So let's get a jeweller's workshop up. We can start cutting some gems, which is the third requirement for the strange mood. Then all we've got left is leather, which I don't think we have, but if we slaughter an animal for bone, then we can also get leather, so we'll need to set up that as well. So let's dive into this jeweller's workshop. You can see all the different gems here. So we're going to cut some sard. I'm not familiar with that one. I don't know if any of you have heard of that before. There's a couple there I recognise. Magnetite could be quite cool. Let's just leave it at sard for now, then hopefully that'll provide some cut gems, which would be nice. We're going to leave it there, guys. So I hope you enjoyed the episode. I've moved my setup around a bit, which has created some audio problems, so I'm having to do more editing than I'm used to in the past. But I hope you've enjoyed it, and then next time we'll crack straight on with this mood from our dwarf, and hopefully we can meet his demands. So have a great week, guys. Cheers.